Yes, people, back again, myself, Mace.
For the third time, myself, French.
And myself, Andrew.
And you're back with a review. It's another season 12 of Fully Booked, the People Them's podcast. We review the books that the people want to read, and then we review them and give our opinion and our feedback. This season, we're reviewing the book, The Weight of the Superior Man by David Deida. Yeah? So we're going to get into it.
You want to touch on just like what the book's about, then we'll go through it before we start.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Pete?
Anyone? Yeah, anyone.
I'd probably be a poor person to actually go through essentially what the book's about, if I'm being honest.
I'll touch on what the book's about.
Okay.
Way of the Superior Man by David Deida. It's basically, it sums up on the title as a spiritual guide to mastering the challenges of women, work, and sexual desires. So it's essentially all your everyday challenges you might get in life. Is how you can master and conquer those to reach the goal that you know you have within you. You might have set from a young age. You might have set, and it's like your whole impact in life is detrimental to is geared towards receiving this goal, and anything in the way that might be detrimental, maybe not in the short term, but in the long term. So he's giving you an overview of how you can master the challenges, and he specifically picked out women, work, and sexual desires because these are often the three things that kind of might interrupt your course to legacy or greatness within yourself that you want to achieve.
Very good synopsis.
Nice one, bro.
Would you not?
Go on.
Would you? All right. So before even reading the book, would you have considered yourselves a superior man?
No, and the reason I say that is because I don't. Maybe I'm the modern day child, but I don't believe in superiority. I don't believe in superior. If we compare it to women, I don't believe in superiority of the sexes. But then even like a superior man, the definition of that, yeah, I don't. Maybe it's self-reflection. This is, but I don't see myself as superior to anyone else, and that's why the way I look at it when you think of a superior being, or yeah, a supreme being or superior being.
What about you, Pete?
I kind of agree with a lot of what May said as to obviously not believing obviously I'm more superior than like one other person, in particular obviously women. But in reference to some of the things certainly in the earlier part of the book, then I would probably, side with like, yes, I am a superior man. In that obviously I know he speaks about chasing your purpose and things of that nature. And I think maybe even to an extent, even coming out of the shadow of your father or your parents and stuff like that. So I would say yes, but obviously I don't believe I'm more superior than any other person, if I'm being very honest.
Cool. All right. So basically, we'll go in the first part of the book. He talks about the archetypes of men and women. Are you guys aware of what some of those archetypes are before I go any further? Just a quick reminder.
I think it'd be nice. Yeah, a quick reminder would be nice.
Yeah, it's about Carl Jung. He's someone that he was the first person to talk about these different archetypes. You have different ones such as king or father, mother or earth, warrior, sage. So there's just different embodiments of how not to say your personality, but you could be interchanging between these different archetypes, but essentially how you may, I guess, present yourself will be determined by these archetypes, and you may be stronger in one than the others, and you may interchange by different ones. But that kind of goes into what he's talking about in terms of discovering your deepest truth and living on your edge, which we'll go into and explain a bit further. So on the first part, the first part of the book, he says, in today's world, he says, I hear independent and successful women complaining that many of today's men have become wimps, too weak and ambiguous to really trust. Sensitive and affectionate men are complaining that many of today's women have become ballbusters, too hardened and emotionally guarded to fully embrace. And that's on page 3. Is this something that any of you have picked up or experienced at all?
Sorry, if you don't mind if I go first. It's funny, you say that, because today I was actually looking at. I don't have a problem with men being open in any way, shape, or form, or having a bit of femininity about them. I don't think that's a problem at all, actually, because I think it's important to be open and express your feelings, etc., etc., and probably crosses. I'm looking for another word, but it kind of like blends in or crosses paths with the masculine masculinity, to which we obviously reviewed before. But I do believe personally there is a fine balance to that essentially, and I think it can be detrimental. I kind of forget where I was going. Well, I kind of forget where I was going, but yeah, I do think there is a fine balance, and I think I think it's led to things such as women. I was going to say becoming a bit more masculine, which is probably true, but kind of stepping up by way of I don't know. I mean, I think we've gone from once upon a time, and I'm going to say just the 80s, for example, or even the 90s, or just a little bit, or not too long ago, where women probably weren't as prominent, let's say, in the workplace in terms of senior roles, etc., and probably being at home and being a housewife, etc., to now obviously taking up prominent roles in the workplace. This wasn't commonplace before, and I think that is, I think, due to a number of things really. It's only right, obviously, if that's what they want to pursue, then they should do that. But at the same time, I think, in recent time, I think there's been a need for that, if that makes any sense. And I hope I've made sense of what I've tried to articulate.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna even butt in watch it speaking. I think it's just a sign of the times, bro. Like, I just think like, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. If you go back even further, then you went back to like the 80s and 90s, even go back further. It's just, I think it's literally just a sign of the times. There's a lot of equality rhetoric pushed out in modern society. There's a lot of things are talked about with like things like glass ceiling for women, and there's like some workplaces will have positive discrimination to make sure there's enough women and BME people within certain roles within an organization, all that kind of stuff. I think it's just a sign of the times that there's a push for more equality. And I think with that, you're going to get more women who will take the kind of the bull by the horn, so to speak, take the whatever it is by the scruff of the neck and just take ownership and leadership within their relationships, within their job fields. And as a result of that, you're going to get, if you've got a woman, for lack of a better term, because I know David Deida also refers to this term, that's got more masculine kind of traits, by default, unless they are gay, unless they are gay, i.e. they still want children and to have a husband, by default, it's likely that some men are kind of gonna have more feminine traits that are not gay, and as such, those two might not, I don't mean marry such, but marry up and go together well. So I just think it's more of a sign of the times that you've got women who have what more traditional masculine traits. Even the field that I work in, even construction, when you go down to like construction sites, you'll see women as site managers now. Women before were just cleaners on construction. You wouldn't see no women. Like now you'll go down, you'll see a woman who's an electrician, you'll see a woman site construction or assistant site construction manager. I think it's just honestly a sign of the times. And you remember, we've spoken about a number of times on this podcast, whether it's we're doing book reviews, whether we're doing fully booked meets, or just having a conversation whereby the media also, like a lot of the stuff I've just spoken about, the media will push out that agenda, and with that, it's the same thing. Media will push out rhetoric that, equality, equal opportunities, all these kind of things. And I think as a result of that, you're gonna get a change in like the kind of traditional shift of what would be your home breadwinner, masculine man, your kind of Popeye, Incredible Hulk type of dude, into a more, like those kind of characters. Obviously, you don't really see on TV no more, and you're gonna get like your women who kind of can take up that strong role. You're kind of your G.I. Janes and you're like what's that woman, Wonder Woman, them kind of people. Not obviously I'm quoting movies, but I mean you're gonna get that in society. So I just think it's a sign of the times. If I'm being honest.
Sorry, if you mind, I'll just jump in again, really. Yeah, so I was talking about obviously how I saw a post, and I think I was listening. I don't want to go too much into the post as such, but we were talking about the type of rhetoric that is being, I don't want to use the word spout, but that is being used at this moment in time. And again, obviously, I don't have a problem with men being a bit more feminine or men being a bit more emotional or men communicating more, because I think it's really important that men and people in general communicate, in particular in a pandemic.
Yeah.
I think with where like maybe some of my concerns lie, or it's not a concern actually with where my point lies is like, obviously we're 30 plus, and I think we've grown up in a time where things were difficult. In fact, things are difficult now, but we've grown up in a time where things are difficult, and you've had to have a sense of strength, both emotionally and physically, in order to survive in some way, shape, or form. And to survive. Let me use the word survive. And I don't think that should be used as an anchor or something that is a weakness or something that I don't know. I don't know. You might be able to help me by way of articulating. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we've used these tools to survive. Of course, there are strengths in having that strength of character, and of course, there are weaknesses in having that strength of character. In our case, let's say, for example, of course, I think we may need to learn to communicate maybe a little bit more, and maybe touching on the mask of masculinity. There are a lot of unlearning that we need to do as well. But I don't think you should. Sorry, go on.
Got a good point. Sorry.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think being masculine is a bad thing. It's funny we were touching on masculinity in reference to watching obviously a podcast and other stuff. I mean, moments before we began. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. But I do think a mix and a blend is definitely needed. And obviously, I know all three of us in some way, shape, or form are striving to, let's say, have that blend. Have that blend. Ultimately, we want to be better people. So it's not a case of I rep for only masculinity. You know what I mean? You want to be a better person.
Yeah, do you know what? Sorry, and one thing I forgot to mention as well, which both of you can probably, this is one of the key things. You would have seen it as well, whether it's branded across the World Wide Web or on adverts or on TV screens, how many adverts or kind of or things are thrown at you in terms of it's okay to talk, men can depress, all that kind of stuff. That's what I was getting at as well, that all that kind of stuff is making it okay for you to show a more sensitive, I want to use the term sensitive side rather than like a weaker side, if that makes sense. That kind of, back in the day, you don't, even the way we were raised, it was like, you don't hate, you must feel, and you crying for no one hit you, that kind of, that's how we were raised. It's none of this emotional stuff. Do you know what I mean? All that emotional stuff now you can bring into the public eye and be shunned upon or looked down upon.
I think it's also getting to a point where it's becoming too like feminized. Like as men, we're becoming, all right, cool. It's okay to cry. Yeah, it's okay to cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. Like, I'll say if I cry, but if like we talk every week, if either one of us is bursting out crying every week, bro, like, come on, man. I was gonna be like, bro, fix up. What are you doing? Like, no, come on, like, don't.
No, I know.
You can have a crying session. You need to cry out, bro. Like, man's here for you, whatever, whatnot. But if you're crying every single week, we're gonna have to go down to the gym and just pump it out or something. Like, do you know? Like, obviously, I'm joking. Like, it's not literally, but just to. And again, we were talking about a conversation just before we started recording, but being on this masculine shit. Like, sometimes I think it's not a bad thing to be proud to be masculine. Like, if you're a strong and silent type, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think you get demonized for not wanting to break down and wanting to let all your emotions out. I think it's almost, you become like, oh, that's so archaic. That's a old way of being, and you should be open out. Man, I personally don't believe that. I think, as P rightly said, there's a mix, and we do strive to do that. And I think, going back to the original question of whether or not I feel I'm a superior man. I think to be a superior man, there's nothing, and I think you've both cleared it up in terms of not being superior than any other human. Yeah, cool, understand that. But just on the note of, this is the title of the book, I consider myself to be an aspiring superior man, which is a mix of feminine and masculine. But going back to the archetypes, my archetype is very masculine. It's on a kingship, it's on a warrior, it's on a sage. Those are things that resonate with me. As soon as I pick up on something that's very geared towards those archetypes, it just resonates with me, just because I'm very masculine in that sense. But in regards to, I guess, leading and following, and like women nowadays, as you said, Mace, it's the times they're in, and you rightly said, P, that they've had to step up to the plate and do what they need to do. But that's also, I guess, encroaching on relationships as well, which is what we're going to go into throughout this book, because this is what it's more or less based around, essentially. So on page 4, he says, if you want real passion, you need a ravisher and a ravishee. Otherwise, you just have two buddies who decide to rub genitals in bed. And that's on page 4. So he also goes on to say, the love may still be strong, the friendship may still be strong, but the sexual polarity fades. Unless in moments of intimacy, one partner is willing to play the masculine pole and one partner is willing to play the feminine. So I'm going to ask, has your partner taken control in the bedroom, or do you allow them to if they do?
Control in what way? Because I'm not getting slapped in doggy for no one. So let's define control right about now. Because obviously, if your missus goes
but listen, because just like the premise was what I was saying in terms of the feminine and the masculine. So the whole point was one partner has to be willing to play the masculine role and one has to be the female role. Now, obviously, I don't know your position in the bedroom, but some men may be more masculine in the bedroom and let their women take over, and vice versa. So I was asking, like, where do you guys stand? Are you more the masculine or are you more the feminine?
How can I put it? Because I put it this way, yeah. Because man ain't a robot, so it don't just stay in one position.
Of course not. You're gonna interchange.
So so what are you saying? Being
overall,
take it. Yeah.
You're thinking about it way too hard.
I was thinking.
It's not even that I'm thinking about it way too hard. It's just.
P, you go on. Let me think about it.
No, sorry. All right, P, you can come, but you can land. But what I'm saying is, if someone decides to go on top,
You're doing way too much explaining.
All right, P, go. Do your thing.
Yeah. So my response or my answer is like kind of simple in that, I do take lead, but obviously it's a relationship. I mean, you may not be in a relationship with that person, but when you are obviously having sex with someone, there is some form of relationship, and of course there might be some point she may want to take lead or want to do something, etc., etc. But I'm gonna say by and large, I'm taking lead. It's not I'm taking lead, but by and large, I'm in.
Don't be afraid of it, man.
No, I'm not. I'm just I don't know why. I just started. You know, I find it really funny, and I'll be very honest about this. When we're specifically talking about sex, I don't know why I get like uncomfortable. Not that I'm uncomfortable, but
that's because it's airing out to the World Wide Web.
Or maybe that's I'm not too sure.
No, do you know what it is? Yeah, because I would say I take the lead, but at the same time, man's like, if we're gonna flip over and all these that kind of things, where someone goes on top or whatever. Am I the one that's like, right, it's time to flip over, or does it naturally happen? Do you know what I'm saying? I can't really.
Yeah, but it's natural. It's not a case of, you play, today you're going to play masculine and I'm going to play. It's not like that. Obviously, it's in the motion. You either almost submit the lead or you take the lead. Do you know what I mean? And it's just a vice versa. And I'm just saying, like, is it more you take the lead or is it more you follow the lead? That's the basis of the question.
Yeah, I would say it's more that I take the lead when it comes to relationships, personally.
Cool. So we'll get into it now. So part 1, a man.
So I'm taking it that you referred to yourself as the.
I said that. I'll take the lead. Yeah, facts.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, more often than not. Not to say that I don't let the women take the lead as well, but on the majority, no, fully. I'll take the lead, man. It's no doubt about that.
What page are you kicking off now on French?
We're on part 1, A Man's Way.
What page? Do you know?
I'm gonna quote it now, then say page.
Yeah.
Where page 14. Page 14. Just
Okay. Do you know what it is? I just wanted to, because there was a couple of early quotes in the book I just wanted to get on. I just felt like
Do your thing.
I just felt like they're quite a good lead into the book, but also a lead into David Deida's mind. So they're quite early. They're in like the first page or so. Because I've got actually, yeah. So one of the quotes on page 5: "You may not know your mission, but unless you discover this deep purpose and live it fully, your life will feel empty at its core, even if your intimate relationship and family life are full of love." So that was like, I just felt that was one of the earliest pages, like maybe page 5. And I just felt like that is a good intro into when we're saying how to sum up the book, that's a very good intro of how to like lead into the book essentially, and what David Deida is saying. Also, there was a couple others. So the mission or the search for freedom is the priority of the masculine, whereas the search for love is the priority of the feminine. So that's David Deida there, kind of separating like a male's kind of prerogative against a female's prerogative, or primary kind of concern. And then just one more. No, sorry, this is a question. So this is a question that rose from me from reading page 6. Would you rather that your sexual partner was physically stronger than you, or would you prefer to feel your lover's physical vulnerability? So I'll repeat.
I would prefer to feel a vulnerability.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay.
I'm wrestling with Ultimate Warrior there. I don't need that.
What? I'm the warrior in the situation. So why would that? Yeah, no, that's. I know what part you're talking about. That was I get that. Was there any more?
Yeah, just one more on page 9. So if you have a masculine sexual essence, then you would probably admit, if you're being brutally honest, that your intimate relationship is just not as important to you as the mission in your life. But you still want a full and energetic, intimate relationship, perhaps quite badly. Oh, this is a question. Sorry. So, okay, question, guys. This was based on what I read on page 9. If you have a masculine sexual essence, then you would probably admit, if we were being brutally honest, that your intimate relationship is not just as important to you as the mission in your life, but you still want a full and energetic, intimate relationships, perhaps quite badly. So that's the quote. How do you deal with this how do you deal with this often misunderstood dilemma?
Cool. So you finished?
Yeah.
Cool. That touches on, funny enough, like in part, the conversation we're having the other day. And also I think the second bullet point or thing you mentioned as to essentially was the balance between your purpose and your relationship. I don't know how deep you want to get into it now, because I know there is probably, I think, a part.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair, that question comes up almost again numerous amount of times throughout the book. So that's why I left it there, because the part that you read, that's almost like a summary of the whole book. So he then breaks it down, and we'll go through it as the book goes on. So
we can do that then.
All right. So starting from part 1, A Man's Way. Stop hoping for completion of anything in life. The masculine error is to think that eventually things will be different in some fundamental way. They won't. It never ends. As long as life continues, the creative challenge is to tussle, play, and make love with the present moment while giving your unique gift. And that's on page 14. Do you know what your gift is, and are you sharing it?
I'll go first. And I think we had this conversation randomly where I was saying, I think it was on the phone to both of you. I was waiting for my trim. Nothing new. But like, actually we was on the phone and I was like, do you know what? I don't think I've fully discovered what, like, I feel like everyone has something that because every single person on this earth is different. There's no two people are even twins. They're not the same. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's got their own unique brain, heart, set of lungs. So everyone must have something that they do that is slightly different from someone else. And it's just finding that. And I was saying, I don't know if I've found what my different is that could like make me not special in terms of special to the world, but just special to myself, that I know I'm the only person who ever thinks or does this or whatever. So I feel like I'm still searching for that. I mean, I know what I'm good at. I know that like I can be I can have the OCD on certain things, But whether that's a kind of skill, I don't know, and what that could help and assist with. And I know I'm very structured with certain things as well, regimented at times. So it's just like I just feel like personally, I still need to find my gift or skill, my unique gift or skill, and that can assist me and help others essentially.
UP.
Actually, well, I know my response actually, but I want to be specific with the question. Do you say, do I know my gift and do I share it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel I know my gift. Do I share it? I feel I might be on the path to beginning to share some of my gifts, but yeah, I mean, we have this conversation. Well, this conversation will certainly discuss things around it maybe quite often. So I feel I know my purpose. I know all that type of stuff already. Yeah, so I'm quite clear with what I want to do and what I'm doing, and if I'm honest, being specific, my gifts. Maybe I might need to kind of narrow down one or two things, if that makes any sense, and work on those maybe a little bit more. Some of the questions I ask myself quite frequently is, do I run away from actually developing those gifts even more? I don't know. I don't know. Do I kind of avoid developing those gifts for some strange reason? I don't want to do a dance and go on another path as such, but do I share them? I think I'm working towards sharing them, but obviously that can be difficult. I think you need to find yourself in a position where you're comfortable in sharing those gifts. And I'm not talking about by way of being vulnerable or worried about sharing those gifts, but sometimes you need to, I don't know, just be a bit more comfortable, you know? I don't know how best to describe that.
I get you. I guess a confidence in your own gift.
Yeah, yes, that's not what I was referring to, but that's obviously a very good point as well. But maybe even to an extent as to being established within yourself, feeling comfortable. Yes, I'm ready to actually share my gift. But yeah, there are a number of reasons, but I think I'm building towards those things anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving on. So moving on the next page, page 15. He says, embrace her or wrestle with her or scream and yell for the heck of it, but no effort to bring an end to that no effort to bring an end to that which pisses you off. And that's on page 15. I was toying with this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think we can love the things we hate about our partner? And I say hate, not in the most strongest of words. I just said hate because it's the opposite of love.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think
it's not literally hate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think me being in a relatively long-term relationship now, it's not like you learn to tolerate's the wrong word, but you learn to this is sound wrong, but right at the same time. You learn to prioritize when to pick and choose what to really say, look, I'm not having this, and what you'll tolerate. Because if you go full steam ahead and everything, no matter how little or how big you have an issue with, actually, it's now a big thing every time. If actually some things that actually might piss you off, but they're minuscule, just you learn to either let them slide or just bring it up in a nice way. But then other things that can be quite important that really gets to you. If you kind of speak about those, then it's more like a what do you call it? Coming together or like I don't know what you call it, like where you're being cohesive. Another word I was looking for. Where you're being like yeah, basically where you're working together almost, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's essentially what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mason, if I'm honest. I don't know, I just try to understand that nobody's perfect. You know what I mean? And again, obviously, we're talking about, we're kind of, well, for the sake of the question, we're talking about actually being in a relationship. I'm not in one, or nor am I seeing anyone at this moment in time, actually. But if you like or you're in love with this person, then I think you grow to understand that's that person. And that might be something that person is actually working on.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a very good point, actually. On page, Reg, did you have a follow-up to that question?
No, go ahead.
On page 15 and 16, there's just a couple of statements. One of them made me think a little bit about you actually, P. So on page 15, there's a little quote or sentence in there where he says, most postponements are excuses for a lack of creative discipline. Limited money and family obligations have never stopped a man who really wanted to do something. That was on page 15. Then page 16, which kind of follows up on that a little bit, is men who have lived significant lives of men who have never waited. Every moment waited is a moment wasted.
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite. It's funny you mentioned we spoke. Today's Friday. We spoke on Monday, and it's funny. There's a couple of things you actually said, which obviously allowed you to say. I didn't try to pick you up on. But sorry, and if I'm honest, I'm not necessarily going to raise them here, which actually defeats the purpose. But yeah, I just don't believe in making excuses. I just think we're at an age, or maybe sometimes a lot of us have actually been through a lot, and then you come to a point or a realization, actually, I don't have time for excuses, and my time actually means a lot to me. And that is, I'm really particular. I mean, with my time, really particular, and I get frustrated when people, and particularly with my family members, when they don't respect my time. It can be anything such as, oh, you know what? People are going to think I'm really harsh about this, actually. And I know my mum feels the same way. So my mum's asked me to pick her up from work over the past, let's say, couple of days. And there's times where I'll say, I can't do that as such. But then I've realized, I think she might have told my sister or told my niece. My niece is 10, 11. My niece will find a way to communicate with me and say, I'm selfish, I'm this, I'm that, the third, so on and so forth. But the way we have a weird relationship where she, when someone likes to get into you, like be really critique you as to your behavior. Anyway, so the way I kind of look at it is like, it will take me half an hour, 45 minutes to go go pick you up, depending on traffic, going towards kind of you, French, don't want to be specific, all right? And then actually there's a lot of traffic coming back because of the time, and now you can't use the bus lanes, etc., etc. So sometimes it can take me an hour and a half, straight 2 hours to go there and back. I've got things going on. Whereas if you were getting on public transport, it will take you half an hour. So, I mean, so I kind of look at it, I know you're both laughing, so for those who are listening by audio. So I look at it as, it will take you half an hour to get back, but it's wasted 2 hours of my day. But I've got things going on. And let's look at it like this. And French is laughing. Sorry. I really do apologize if I come across crazy, all right? Because obviously we're talking about our parents here. But we're talking about reading a book and how I haven't completed the book. I was supposed to read the book today, yesterday, and the day before. But oddly enough, I've been sleeping really early. Those 2 hours between 4 and 6, I probably would have been reading a book, or I would have organized myself to read the book. But yeah, I was in bed by 7, 8, 9, gone. Just you just fall asleep, and then before you know, it's 3 a.m. And that's happened on 2-3 days in a row. Funny enough, the days I've gone to pick her up, because I've used my energy and my time elsewhere. I'm really I'm funny about stuff like that, man. And I find myself more productive in doing so, being like a stickler for time. But it's not just my mum, it could be anything, you know what I mean?
So the internet gets you, bruv. That's mine out.
Make a meme out of you, boy.
I'm not fussed at all. I mean, very quickly. No, I'm glad you said that. I'm very quickly. I don't want to go too deep into my own situations and stuff like that, but stuff such as, obviously, I've also given an example of my mum. I don't feel good about what I'm saying and what I'm doing, but I believe it's for the benefit of myself. And I think sometimes you need to be selfish. I really do. I think sometimes you really need to be selfish in order to get the best out of yourself and take yourself to the next level. I find myself being really, really productive, which is, again, really important for me.
No, I get that. To finish up and kind of go off the back of the last question, and this is, I guess it's quite, to be fair, we're going to get through quite a few chapters quite quickly just because the way the book's done. So it's not that we're not having an in-depth conversation. It's just that it's broken up into so much different parts. It's going to seem like we're going through the chapters quickly. But just to end up on part 1, he says on page 16, the world and your woman will always present you with unforeseen challenges. You are either living fully, giving your gift in the midst of these challenges, even today, or you're waiting for an imaginary future that will never come. Men who have lived significant lives are men who never waited, not for money, security, ease, or women. Feel what you want to give most as a gift to your women and to the world. Do what you want to give. Do what you can to give it today. Every moment waited is a moment wasted, and each wasted moment degrades your clarity of purpose. And part 2, which is live with an open heart, even if it hurts. To act as a superior man.
Sorry, French, before you go on to part 2, on part 1, see that last statement you read out here? There's a point in which it says, the world, the women and the world, or the world and the woman and your woman, or something like that. Even little things like that. Why do you think he felt the need? Is it because his relationship he felt the need to throw in the woman? Like, he's almost like...
No, because... Yeah, go on. No, finish your point.
It's almost like he's saying, your woman's going to... Like, the world's got problems. Your woman's problems are different from the world problem. Like, they're going to be a whole nother... They have to be separate from the world's problems, that makes sense. And it's like, that's the almost... Anyway, go on. Yeah, that's the point I'm getting at.
I'm thinking, I've read it as he's comparing the problems that you get from the world are just as equal as the problems you're going to get from your woman. So how you handle the problems that you have with your woman is how you're going to handle the problems in the world. Essentially, that's how I've read it.
That's a very good point, actually, because I think obviously French, you mentioned earlier something he said as to, I mean, there are always things going on. There's always something that you need to do. You know what I mean? And finding
there's always a challenge. Facts.
Yeah, there's always a challenge. Always a challenge. Sorry, I just wanted to add. I think I forget exactly what you said on the first point, but like going back to I think one of your earlier questions, something you said like kind of tweaked my ear. We were having a conversation probably, let's say 2-3 months ago, and if you asked him, I think you said to me, "Why are you shouting?" And I actually remember. I remember, like, obviously we were on the phone, so we weren't on Skype, not Skype, we weren't on or anything like that. So I remember, like, kind of like, you know, when you kind of pull back as to why am I shouting, all right? And then I sat there for a second, and then we continued the conversation. But once we came off the phone, and I thought to myself, actually, I've got to answer that question. I think, in fact, no. And you said to me, in fact, what you said was, because I know you can't be angry at me. That's exactly what you said. And I sat there, so I remember pulling back, and I went, I'm not angry at him. So I'm not angry at French. That's not my issue. So when I pulled back, I asked myself that question. And then when I got off the phone, I ended up thinking, actually, I need to answer that question. All right. And I came to the conclusion it's because I'm very passionate. Again, when we speak on the phone, I'm always talking very loudly, very quickly, very aggressively. Sometimes you don't say I'm very aggressive when we're having debates. No, it's because I'm quite passionate about things, or I might be passionate about that subject, or I want to get my point across. And within my let's say some of my working experiences, likewise yourself, whether it's working in education or some of the other fields that I've worked in, it kind of like evolves around, let's say, the development of people in some way, shape, or form. So I think maybe to answer that question before, I think, I am kind of sharing some of my gifts, if that makes any sense. And sorry, the reason why that popped in my brain was because someone called me, probably I think it was last week, and we're having just a very, very gentle, very simple conversation, maybe a catch up. And they went into a conversation as to me giving that person advice as to what I think that person should do. And I'll say I was probably giving advice based on my own experience, but at the same time, that person being 10 years my junior, and me having obviously been through his experiences, and me telling him, don't make that mistake, because that's your ego talking. You'll end up regretting that. I'm here now, and these are the things that I'm having to do to undo the learning or undo the mistakes that have taken place this at this point, that point, or that point. And also, you don't know what that person has been through as to why they're acting out in this way. But at some point, I feel you will get those answers. So at this moment in time, do the right thing. Spike Lee, do the right thing, and hopefully, at some point, you know, you'll get some form of I don't know, benefit from doing the right thing.
Cool. Was you going to jump in as well, then, Miss?
No, I don't want to say anything.
Cool. All right. So part 2, live with an open heart, even if it hurts. So to act as a superior man, a samurai of relationship, you must feel the entire situation with your whole body. A closed body is unable to sense subtle clues and signals, and therefore unable to act with mastery in a situation. What's your interpretation of that statement? And that's on page. Oh, I didn't even write the page number down. I think that's. I didn't write the page number down on that one. It's on part 2.
Usually,
go on.
I think what I briefly took from what you said, sometimes it takes me twice hearing something to get it. But what I got from you is, I think when you, I don't want to say have an ego, that's for lack of a better word. I think you're not open to suggestions, and you can't respond or do the right thing because you have a bias.
Yeah, I think that's a dope analogy still. What about you, Mace?
Repeat the question, sorry, French, because I missed a little bit of it.
It's more a statement. I just think, what's your interpretation of the statement? But to act as a superior man, a samurai of relationship, you must feel the entire situation with the whole body. A closed body is unable to sense subtle cues and signals, and therefore unable to act with mastery in a situation. For me, I'll give my 2 pence as well. How similar to you, Pete, like just to piggyback off what you were saying, but also to add a bit more context with it. I think if you've got a closed body, you're not being able to pick up on the non-verbal cues in a relationship. So you maybe not be able to, when someone steps into the room, you can sense their energy.
Yeah.
Or the energy in them. You may be having a conversation and the energy just changes for whatever reason. I think you've got a closed body. You're not going to be able to sense that. And if you're in a relationship, if you've got a closed body in that relationship, you're not going to be able to tell when those subtle changes happen. So even if your missus, your partner may feel showing that she's or he is one way and they actually feel another way, and you can sense that they feel another way, if you've got a closed body, you wouldn't be able to sense it. You'll just take their I guess, their answer or their...
Yeah, their answer what it is, really, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, just the facade of, yeah, I'm good. But if you actually sense that they're not good, if you've got a closed body, you're not going to be able to pick up on that change of energy, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, that's my interpretation of what that says.
Yeah. Okay. I'm entitled to agree with. Sorry, I'm inclined to agree with both of you. To be fair, you said, and it's exactly that. And speaking from someone who's obviously in a relationship, you can sense when things are not all okay because you know what all okay looks like and feels like.
So part 3, moving. Is there anything before I move on? Because I said that we're going to go through these chapters quite quick because they are quite short.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Cool. Part 3, live as if your father were dead. Now, imagine that your father has died, and this is on page 19. Imagine that your father has died, or remember that he did die. Are there any feelings of relief associated with his death? Now that he is dead, is any part of you happy that you need not to live up to his expectations or suffer his criticisms? How would you have lived your life differently if you've never tried to please your father? If you've never tried to show your father that you were worthy? If you never felt burdened by your father's critical eye? Did you, whilst reading those questions, did any of you try and, I guess, almost role play and think about those questions and answer them at all?
Do you know what with that, see that statement you just read out, it's going to sound weird. I can fully get where David Deida is coming from that statement, because I'm assuming that the typical household has that father that was who kind of has expectations, a certain standard of expectation for their son. I didn't grow up in a household like that. I was pretty free. So in terms of whether my father's here, my father's not here, there's no sense of burden that's released, or thank goodness because I didn't quite live up to this expectation, or I wish my father would see me get here. I kind of grew up a bit more freer than that. So that really didn't resonate with me, if I'm honest.
Yeah. What about you, P?
Yeah, there were a number of things really. I think we've done this, or we've done something very similar in a book we've read, or a season before. There's a sentence I'm going to read, and I'm going to answer the question. It says, "How would you have?" I think you might have said it anyway. How would you have lived your life differently if you had never tried to please your father, if you never try to show your father that you were or forget the worthy part anyway. The point I'm making is, I think in particular, I'm going to say even in African households, and obviously I imagine it's different in other cultures too, where your parent wants you to become, let's say, a lawyer, a doctor, blah, blah, blah. The list is endless. And sometimes the list is very narrow. But that individual, that son or daughter, but let's say son, doesn't actually want to do those things, but does that because that is what the father wants. And you find that, in fact, funny enough, you find that some footballers have that issue. Like, for example, Peter Schmeichel and what's his face? I forget his name. Kasper Schmeichel. I don't know. Anyway, father and son in football, you may sometimes find the way of expectation. In particular, if your father was a legend, because you want to, I don't know, live up to that expectation. Whereas maybe your father, for example, just wants you to play football. And I remember, I think, listening to Peter Schmeichel, and I'll touch upon myself in just a moment. But I remember listening to Peter Schmeichel, I think, speak. This is obviously not verbatim, but I mean, speaking of the pride and joy, obviously, of his son obviously winning the Premier League with Leicester, and speaking of the pressures of him obviously having to live up to his name, and obviously him or Peter Schmeichel being probably the greatest keeper in the Premier League. Is some expectation, is some that's a tall order. You know what I mean? For some of the things obviously Peter Schmeichel went on to achieve. But as for myself, I'm currently going through some of those things, I say kind of like as we speak, but I don't think, maybe as a young individual, there's been maybe expectations, but I've always been, and even judging by even some of the things I said earlier about my mum, I've always been a bit of a semi-renegade, and I'm certainly living up to even those things now. Like, I'm not interested in what your expectations are, etc., etc. And in particular, I'm finding a bit more obviously about my mother and my father, and I don't know, the way they grew up, etc., etc., going back home, all that type of stuff. I feel a lot of those shackles have kind of like come off myself. Yeah, they come off myself. So I don't feel I have that way of expectation, but there has become in recent time like a real sense of belonging, or greater sense of self in understanding who I am, but also understand obviously who they are. I don't know if that answers the question precisely. Yeah.
No, it was just a number of questions. I was just saying, like, if you've gone through, obviously not, yeah, I mean, literally maybe of thinking, oh, if my dad was there, how would I feel? Just basically going through the exercise that you presented.
Yeah, I think naturally, I think you would obviously you'd be very, very hurt, very heartbroken, all those things. But I think I'm arriving at a point where, if it were to end today or tomorrow, I'll be quite comfortable. It's mad because actually I had a really deep conversation, but a very short conversation with my dad today, about someone in particular, and it was something I couldn't really ignore. You know what I mean? So we had to have a real honest conversation. But I thought to myself, I'm the only person who's going to have this conversation. I don't think anyone else is going to have this conversation with you. And I definitely don't want to go into it. I think there's no need to go into it, actually. But following that, I spoke to one of my other brothers, who's my half brother, who lives in Ghana, and I said, like, we need to speak tomorrow at 3. We need to speak tomorrow. He has no idea what it is, but anyway, I don't want to go into depth. I don't think there's any need. But yeah, I'm very comfortable at this moment in time. So if it unfortunately ended tomorrow, I'd be I don't want to say happy man, but I mean, I feel comfortable. I think disappointed, but I'd feel comfortable, which is a great place to be, because not many people would find themselves in that situation.
True.